Say hello to Crassostrea virginica, also known as the eastern oyster. These little creatures may not look like much, but they are essential to the Chesapeake Bay. They are a keystone species on which many other species largely depend, so their health is linked to the entire ecosystem. The ecosystem's health has been in decline for quite some time, but the most recent and pressing threat is that from nutrient pollution. When the runoff of stormwater, fertilizer, manure, etc. washes loads of excess nitrogen and phosphorus down into the Chesapeake Bay via the watershed, algae and aquatic plant life go into overdrive. When they die, aerobic bacteria break down all the biomatter, depleting the water of oxygen in the process. Every summer, this process called eutrophication creates dead zones, where the water is too oxygen deficient to support much life. Oysters, however, have the incredible ability to filter excess nitrogen and phosphorus from the water. As this experiment demonstrates, they are filter feeders, opening and closing their shells to pump water through their gills and filter out plankton, sediment, and pollutants. Oysters purify the water just by eating, and they do it at an incredible rate. A single adult oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water in a single day. Biologists have even estimated that when English settlers reached the Chesapeake in the 1600s, oysters were filtering the entire bay about once a week. Unfortunately, oyster reefs now cover just 1% of the area they did at those historic levels. But how do oyster bars even form? Let's take a look at the life cycle of an oyster. Each spring, the waters of the Chesapeake Bay begin to rise in temperature, signaling that it is time to spawn. Mature oysters release sperm and eggs into the water, with females producing about 100 million eggs each year. When eggs are fertilized, they become larvae, freely swimming around the water. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, the larvae grow a foot, which they use to explore and find a suitable surface to settle on. The larvae turn into spat when they secrete a cement-like substance and fix themselves into place, usually on top of another oyster's shell. Oysters grow by adding the calcium they filter from the water to their shells, where it accumulates over their lifespan. Though it only takes 3 years for oysters to become mature or ripe, their reefs can take decades to fully form. Sanctuaries are often used to protect these reefs as they are still developing. Oysters help the environment by filtering the excess nutrients from the water, but they also provide key marine habitat for their fellow species. The clearer water surrounding a reef promotes the growth of submerged aquatic vegetation, such as eelgrass and wild green celery. In turn, these plants provide habitat for spawning fish and crustaceans like the juvenile blue crabs shown here. They are also a year-long food source for waterfowl like this green-winged teal, and other dabbling ducks. These birds feed not only on the vegetation, but also on some of the smaller creatures who inhabit it as well. The roots of this vegetation help to stabilize and secure the sediments on the bottom so that they don't wash away or into the oyster bars, which can die if they're smothered. Additionally, immobile creatures such as barnacles, mussels, sea anemones, and tube worms inhabit and contribute to the food web of the reef, and many of them also filter the water. Oyster reefs present a unique opportunity since they support so many other species. By protecting and restoring eastern oyster populations, we can help the entire Chesapeake Bay with cleaner water and more marine habitat.